The following is a conversation with Daniel Erickson, the founder and CEO of Viable. Viable's mission is to help teams make better product decisions based on customer feedback. Viable helps automatically aggregate, structure, and analyze that feedback so teams can answer burning questions about customers in seconds. If you like this type of content and are interested in GPT-3, subscribe to our channel and check out our GPT-3 manual book by O'Reilly. This is Sandra and Shubham, and we hope you enjoy this interview. Dan, once again, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us and to share a little bit of your insight into what it's like to build with GPT-3 on a bigger scale. I was curious to begin with, how did the idea of Viable appear in your radar? Like, how did that happen that you started to think about it, and how did your product look like before you decided to use GPT-3 as one of the core components of your product?
So we actually started our company with a slightly different mission and vision than what we do now. We started helping early stage companies find product market fit by using the superhuman product market fit process, so the same process that the email client Superhuman used to find product market fit for themselves, which was basically sending out a survey, collecting a bunch of responses, and then going through those responses and tagging them with features and pain points and things like that, so that it can kind of help guide your roadmap to build the right product for your user base. Now we built that product originally, and we had some sort of internal NLP and automation that helped us extract those kinds of topics that we built up using a combination of models and just some straight up algorithms. And that interface that we built made it really easy for them to sort through all of this data. But at the same time, it was focused on early stage startups, and there's not a whole lot of money in that ecosystem. But at the same time, we started to see usage from companies that were much larger, and those companies started to come to us and say, like, hey, we've got a lot of other unstructured text that we need help understanding here. From our users. So things like support tickets and social media and app store reviews and survey responses, all of those things. And we're like, well, we've got a pretty good interface here to look through all of that. But we didn't support anything outside of just our own survey that we were sending at the time. This was back in June, July of 2020, when we started to think about sort of moving away from product market fit and into this just more broad customer feedback space. So yeah, basically our larger customers started to pull us in that direction. At the same time, back in June of 2020, I also got access to GPT-3. We were one of the first companies that got access there. I think there were less than 100 people in the Slack channel or the Slack group when I first got there. So we got to play around with it really early. We had this awesome data set of customer feedback that we could use with it. It turned out it was just a really great way of not only extracting insights from that data set, but just interacting with the data set as well. We ended up using it for the question and answer feature that we have, which is basically you can ask a question in plain English. We then used GPT-3 and a combination of our own internal models and systems to convert that question into a complex query that can then basically pull all of the relevant feedback that you're looking for to answer that question from our database / search index. And then from there, it basically pipes it through another series of models that also includes GPT-3 to actually write an answer by doing summarization and analysis on top of the text. We basically made a pivot away from product market fit, measuring and surveys, and then over to the customer feedback side of things, and moved up market as well from there. So we started that transition a little over a year ago at this point. We've been going on that ever since.
So just wanted to follow up on the same, at a point you decided to use GPT for your product, right? But before that, you might have this idea. So did you try any other models or techniques that you evaluated before GPT-3? And when you did this and use GPT-3, did you face any kind of trade-off between using something that is open source and available for free versus using GPT where you have to pay for the API per call?
Yeah, so we definitely looked into models like BERT and Albert and those ones. In fact, we actually still to this day have some BERT and Albert models that we've trained ourselves. These days, actually, what we're mostly using GPT-3 for is the actual generation of the answers themselves, and a lot of the structuring of the data is done through internal models that we've developed ourselves on top of mostly Albert, actually.
Got it.
And that was mostly due to cost. If we were the nice thing about GPT-3 and actually just OpenAI in general is that it's hosted, in that we don't have to actually do anything ourselves to get that thing to run well. Right? We can just talk to their API and that's that. And my philosophy, at least, is I would much rather buy than build for almost anything that isn't super core to our tech. And even in this case, if it is core to our tech, it still makes sense for us to do it with GPT-3 there. So our ideal was to use GPT-3 for literally everything, but there's cost prohibitiveness for a lot of things, because we have companies that are giving us literally hundreds of thousands of data points that are anywhere from 5 to 1,000 words each, and that can get really expensive if we're using it to structure the data as well as analyze it.
Makes sense. Totally makes sense.
So following up on that, you mentioned that you like when you are able to buy something instead of building it yourself, if it's not your core core element of the product. And also, you kind of started experimenting with GPT-3 right after the access to it was released. I'm just curious, what were your key motivators, key reasons for using GPT-3 in the first place? Was it the fact that it's cutting edge, or the fact that it's easy to use, or
a little bit,
and more?
It was clearly the best model out there at what it does. When it first came out, it still is, as far as the ones that are actually accessible to me. And there's so from a capabilities standpoint, it was the best of the market, and I just wanted to validate that it would work for our use cases. At the time, our stuff was pretty naive. We were attempting to extract sentiment and emotion and topics from all of these things, and I would say we were probably in the 80 percentile range as far as accuracy goes. Especially on emotion, that was actually probably even lower than that at the time. And then we sort of plugged GPT-3 in, and we saw at least a 10% increase across the board, which was, when we're talking going from 80% to 90% there, it's a hell of an increase for us. So it was good. And as far as sort of what led us to go that direction, it was a little bit about accuracy for those tasks, which is funny because now we've actually built up our own internal models that we bootstrapped using the answers from or the output of GPT-3. So those ones are actually meeting or exceeding the GPT-3 stuff for topic extraction, for emotion and sentiment analysis, and things like that. So we're no longer using GPT-3 for that, but GPT-3's output helped us train those other models.
As you said, right, GPT-3's output helped you to think about those other models or think about how it can be done. So do you think GPT-3 was a turning point in Vible's journey, and it somehow guided it to be where it is right now and gave it some direction. Like how do you put it in words when you have to describe that journey from where from where you were introduced to GPT-3 and how it acted as a turning point for Viable?
So when I first started working with GPT-3, I just knew that I had a really good data set for it. I had a bunch of unstructured text. So I figured it could do something with it. I wasn't entirely sure what direction we were going to take things with it. I knew that our previous product, the product market fit product, wasn't going to be a big enough market for us. So I needed something new for us to go to. And so I spent actually about a month just experimenting, literally just taking our data, putting it into the playground, figuring out different prompts and things like that. And eventually came to the conclusion that this could power a very powerful question and answer system. So we actually didn't have this idea for the question and answer stuff before we started playing with GPT-3. It was sort of our exploration into GPT-3 that opened up that possibility for us. And that we saw was really sort of integral to this new product that we have. In fact, our new product is basically, it's got two pillars. One is the question and answer experience that's almost entirely powered by GPT-3. And we came to that just through experimentation, literally just playing around in the playground and going from there. The other pillar is also actually using generative text and GPT-3 for it, which is our new summary emails that come out. So now we pipe all of that data that we're collecting for our customers into a single place, and we take, let's say, if it's a weekly cadence, we can take everything we just ingested for the last week and then actually write up a summary of it. We do about a 12-paragraph summary every week for each of our customers that outlines things like their top complaints, their top compliments, their top requests, and top questions that are being asked. So now we've got kind of that push and that pull, and both of those came from just experimenting with GPT-3 and understanding its capabilities.
Great to know that.
That's amazing. I can imagine that throughout this whole phase of experimenting with GPT-3 and then like testing, testing different capabilities and trying to integrate it into your product or even reshape your product accordingly. There must have been some hurdles, some challenges that you have come across. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Like, what were the biggest obstacles that you have come across so far?
Yeah, sure. So one was cost optimization. When I first came up with the prompts that we were using, they were like, they'd use the entire 2,000 tokens available to us. I tried to pack in as much context there as possible. I'd have 5 or 6 or sometimes even 20 or a couple dozen different examples that I put into them. That combined meant that, each of our questions that are being asked were costing us dollars instead of cents there. As an early stage sort of VC backed company, that's not too big of a problem, but that's not how we're going to build a scalable business model on top of this. And so it took us a while to figure out what our pricing would look like compared to what our costs were to make sure our margins were right, so that we could do this. And we actually ended up completely changing up our pricing model to sort of build on top of OpenAI's pricing model, so that we could guarantee that we're always above water on that. So we switched to basically a fully usage-based model from that. Which allowed us to basically just charge on the data volume that people are inputting into our system. So that was one big one. Let's see, another challenge was understanding when to use GPT-3 and when to use our own internal models. We have, at this point, close to a dozen, actually I think a little over a dozen internal models that we do now outside of our usage of GPT-3. But in the beginning, we basically just leaned on GPT-3 for everything. It was doing sentiment, emotion, topic extraction, noise filtering, a bunch of stuff. But now we've actually switched to using our own internal models again for a lot of that stuff. But we use GPT-3 to actually help train those models, which was kind of a cool cool experience there. So yeah, I mean, but both of those kind of come down to cost. And to be honest, cost is the hardest thing when it comes to anything OpenAI.
That is great. You still use GPT-3's output or GPT-3 in some form to retrain the model or fine-tune the internal models that you have?
So those ones are pretty much set at this point. We don't have too much retraining that we're doing on that. So we're not doing a whole lot on that front right now, but we are using a combination of GPT-3 output and human annotation to do fine tuning on top of GPT-3 as well for some of our summarization tasks. Yep. So our process for that is basically like we take generations that GPT-3 has already done for us, and then we have humans go through and edit them to make it, make more sense, or to make it look, or follow the format that we're looking for, and then we can turn around and actually fine tune GPT-3 on top of that. So
that is great. So in the last 1 year, Dan, like there has been a great interest in the founders, the innovators community about building something on top of GPT-3, a product that is powered by GPT-3. So what are the key advice, or what are the key important things that you want to give away to the young founders or the innovators who want to build a product with GPT-3 as a backbone, as you have very successfully executed Viable as a product? So what are the key advices that you want to give those founders, innovators that's out there?
For sure. So I'm going to answer this in a little bit of a roundabout way, but there's really two kinds of applications that I've seen for GPT-3, and they're sort of separated into these two categories. I think one of these categories is where you should focus, and then the other one is going to get really crowded really fast. So here's how I think about it. One category is what I call prompt-based development. So this is like, I think the best example of this, and probably the one that's going to be the most successful, is Copy AI, where they take prompts and then they build a product around that prompt, and then they ship that product, right? It's not like it's almost like a one-to-one. You're just building a user interface for that prompt, right? And there's a ton of companies out there that are trying to do things like ad copy generation, website generation, basically all of those things that are just prompts. And all it does is take your data in that you type in and sends it over into a prompt and shows you what the thing generated. Now, if you're going to go that way, you've got to kind of follow the Copy AI model, which is just continually expand your capabilities, add more and more and more prompts. One of the things that Copy AI does is they track the number of new products that they create every month, and they're literally shipping 3 to 5 new prompts every month on there. So you're going to have to be able to match or exceed their speed if you want to beat them, which at this point I think is going to be really hard to do. On the flip side, though, there's the other category, and that is where you have some pipeline of data coming in that works well with GPT-3. This could be, for us, it's customer feedback data from a bunch of different sources, but I could see this for financial data, so like S1s from the SEC, any sort of like investor notes or anything like that from companies. I could see this for the academic world, for any sort of academic papers, summarization around that. Basically, if you've got a data set, like a large data set that you can continually get more data in for, and people will pay for some sort of insight extraction for it or from it, then that sort of model I think is the one that can be monetized most easily, and that's where we've sort of netted out on the customer feedback side. But there's so many other opportunities there. I'm constantly looking over and going like, wow, this same technology that we build could be built or could be used for, say, internally figuring out what people are talking about in Slack channels, for instance, right? Like, nothing to do with customer feedback there, but it's basically the same sort of task where you take in a bunch of text, figure out what it's actually meaning, and then write some sort of summary or answer questions about it. So it's these two sort of categories, right? One is I have a task that is easily done by a single prompt. Let me just build a quick UI around that and get it to users. The other one is I have a data set that I need to do something with that GPT-3 can handle. At that point, pipe that through. People pay a lot more money for data than they do for prompt output. So I recommend going that way.
Just to reiterate what I understood, like the only advantage or the only mode you have when you're building a prompt-based use case is moving faster. Speed is the only thing you have. You don't have that value when you work on data set driven or domain driven use cases where you can actually and easily monetize on that stuff. So that's a pretty great advice. Thanks for clarifying that to all the viewers that's watching this.
For sure.
I have actually a follow-up question to this. So, because like one thing is to choose a path, a use case for yourself. Another thing is to actually create the successful basis for your product and then scale it. And you've done it very successfully. So therefore, I'm curious if you have any advice as to how to scale. Maybe somehow connected to the pricing, as you mentioned, that you need to have a good formula for yourself when it comes to balancing out the API pricing and your product pricing.
Yeah, definitely. Don't prematurely scale is my first piece of advice. Make sure that you've got a sort of scalable model that you can do before you hit the gas. And what I mean by that is specifically around pricing. You don't want to, charge 10 cents and then get charged 20 cents. You're going to lose a bunch of money that way. So you really have to figure out, is my use case, is there value enough in this product that I've created in order for us to charge the customers enough to cover the costs of the ingestion? And ideally, not just cover the costs, but also, a large enough margin to where you can, pay your people, you can pay salespeople, all of that. Also, generally speaking, if you go that second category route, the data route that I was talking about, first off, I think that's probably more sustainable, just because, like I said, people pay for data analysis. If you're going that route, though, you're going to be playing in the data space. And when you're in the data space in business, it tends to be pretty enterprise. You're not going to build too much of a self-serve product that way. Most large companies are going to need to do things like security reviews. They're going to need to do things like, they're going to look through your yearly contract with their lawyers. And, it's usually a multi-week process, if not multi-month process, to land a single customer. So you have to be prepared to wait that time and navigate all of those little roadblocks that get thrown in your way. And you have to, make sure that not just your technical systems are scaling for their volume, but also all of your internal processes. So things like, do you have enough salespeople to go out and close the number of deals that you need in order to grow as fast as you want to grow? Are you enterprise ready? Do you have SOC 2 compliance? Do you have single sign-on? All of the things that enterprise companies are going to need, because if you're doing a data play, enterprise companies is where it's at. You're probably not going to make a lot of money off of the small end of the market on the data side, because usually, at least in our side of the world, a lot of companies that are super small just don't have enough customer feedback for them to need something like us to analyze it for them. Now, I could see potential use cases outside of that where an individual might pay for things. Financial analysis is one that I could see individual investors paying for. Kind of have to figure out what your business model looks like, but you have to be able to charge enough to cover the costs of GPT-3. So that's the biggest thing to figure out first, is how much does the value that I'm providing cost me? And then from there, figure out what multiple you need on top of that in order to make that make sense for your company. So that's the biggest thing is that. Second is, make sure that you've worked with GPT or you've worked with OpenAI to figure out what the right quotas are for you, like as far as the like your limits go. We ended up working with them quite a bit on both the sort of total volume that we're sending, as well as things like rate limits throughout the thing, because we have some companies that are sending us literally thousands of data points a day, which means we hit their API quite a bit. And so we needed to work with them to make sure that all the rate limits and all of the sort of caps and quotas are at where they need to be. So that's sort of like getting ready to scale. And then we've sidestepped a lot of the sort of technical scale side of things just by going mostly serverless with our architecture. So from a technical standpoint, we've built this out with scale from the beginning because we knew that we were going to be importing quite a bit of data through here. So most of our system actually looks like a sort of high volume ETL for us. And then from there, that ETL is sort of plugged into all those different models that I was talking about.
That is great.
Awesome.
2 cents
so
on scaling your company when you build it on GPT-3. So as you talked about you collaborating with OpenAI and GPT-3 being the backbone of your product, do you actively collaborate with OpenAI on how to improve the API response that will better suit your needs as well, like fine-tuning the API or getting some specialized support for prompt engineering or any kind of specialized support that you get from OpenAI? Can you talk a little bit on that?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit there. So I've been working with the applied AI team over there, and honestly, I'm chatting with them at least once a week at this point. We're also actually, because we were so early with the product, we built a pretty good relationship with the team over there. And so we end up, being some of the people who help them think through like APIs and things like that for some of their newer beta products that are coming out as well. So I can't talk too much about that kind of stuff, but yeah, we've cultivated a good relationship with them, and we because of our volume, we actually even have like a shared Slack channel, for instance, where like our team and their team can chat whenever they need to.
Just following up on that, just feel free to not answer that if you think it's not appropriate. But when you say collaborate with them, do you think there's always this flexibility in the API response that can be triggered, or that can be made to give the responses based on your needs, or based on that can be primed based on your use case, or fine tune on your use case by doing some kind of customization or adding some layers on top of it? Do you think there's this flexibility that exists with the API that we don't see in from the public perspective, from the docs that are out there?
There are API endpoints that are not publicly available or documented yet, and like there is flexibility in the API itself. I wouldn't say for the individual endpoints. Like if you have access to an endpoint, like there's no hidden features there or anything like that. It's just we end up getting early access to some of their newer products that they're rolling out.
Great. Thank you.
So I'm just wondering, from the perspective of somebody that considers to work with OpenAI API, and also understands that, for example, this is a very dynamic product, and there's a lot of changes happening, on a monthly or quarterly basis to it. Yep. Does OpenAI somehow help you stay up to date, or do you educate yourself? How do you keep up to date with new changes? For example, I know that one of these major changes recently was the fine-tuning endpoint. And how do you get informed about this? Do you get informed about this ahead, etc.? Like, this is very interesting to me.
Actually, even back in June of 2020, they were talking about fine tuning. It wasn't quite ready yet. I think back then it was like July or maybe August or September of 2020. where they actually invited a few people into the fine-tuning like beta group. We were actually not part of that, but we had expressed interest in fine-tuning back then. And so the applied AI team over there made note of that and reached out to us when they were able to sort of get us in on that side. So that's part of sort of cultivating that relationship. That means that they do actually proactively reach out to us sometimes and say, hey, there's this new thing that we'd love to try. I think the key there is to just like cultivate a really good relationship there and make sure that you're giving them like valuable feedback because they're trying to build a business just like I am. And so any sort of feedback that I can get to them, the better for them. In fact, we actually at one point we're actually talking to them about having them use Viable to improve GPT-3 itself, which is kind of this really interesting sort of meta loop there. So, yeah.
Awesome, thank you. So now I want to go back to your comment on the fact that you consider GPT-3 as the best model out there on the market. Do you feel like introducing GPT-3 gave you a competitive edge? And in what way you think about it? In what way you think about this edge that GPT-3 gives?
Absolutely. So it gave us two things. One, an accuracy boost, and two, a usability boost. I think that both of those things gave us an edge over the competition. A lot of people in our space, what I would call the sort of textual analytics space, which we're only sort of tangentially part of, but are mostly focused on building tools for analysts. So basically they pipe in a bunch of data, they do like topic extraction, sentiment, that kind of thing. And then they let people write queries and build graphs and charts and things like that on top of that. But you've got to be pretty technical in order to do that. You have to actually know the data set. You have to spend time understanding it and then sort of corralling it into a format that you need. And then turning around and hopefully building a graph that can output the the understanding that you want to share with the rest of your team. We didn't want to build a piece of software that only analysts could use because we feel like that limits the value. What we want to do is help teams make better decisions using qualitative data. And if we're doing that, then the way to do that is to not make a bottleneck on some data science team or some business intelligence team. We want to make sure that anybody in the company could actually get value out of this data set. The way that we figured out how to do that was GPT-3. It was basically that question and answer translation system that we put together, which meant that if you have a question, we can get you an answer. It used to be if you had a question, you had to go to your analytics team or you had to go to your user research team, and then they would get you an answer like 2 weeks later. But that's a really slow feedback loop, and we want to make sure that people could actually get their answers quickly and accurately. So what GPT-3 allowed us to do is that we are not a piece of software for analysts to use. We are a piece of software that is an analyst because of GPT-3. So we're able to have this really great user experience because we have systems that understand natural language.
And following up on that, I'm curious, do you have any kind of human in the loop for checking on the quality of the outputs? Like it's amazing that it helps you with scaling, but at the same time, I'm just curious, how does it work? How do you evaluate the outputs internally?
Yeah, actually, our product has a little thumbs up and thumbs down button next to every answer that we generate, right now, it's not fully automated, so it's not like retraining or fine tuning based on those. But we are recording all of that and use that when we do retraining. Those things are helping. Basically, our customers are actually helping us make it smarter across the board. In the future, we might even be able to do things like, help each customer fine tune it for themselves. But right now, all those thumbs up and thumbs downs are just making it better for everyone. Those help. But then we also do our own sort of internal, we have our own annotation team, for instance. And what they do is they build up our training data sets, both for our own internal models as well as for GPT-3 fine tuning. And specifically around the GPT-3 fine tuning, it's a sort of cycle that we do, right? We generate a bunch of training data. We then fine tune the thing on that training data, and then we go double check the results. And we go through and it generates more. And then the way that our system or that our annotation actually works is we're not having them just kind of come up with these annotations off the top of their head, because it's pretty complex. Our input is like a bunch of data and our output is a paragraph. What we do is we actually have the current iteration of that fine-tuned model output a bunch of stuff for us. And then humans go through and say, this was good, this was bad. And if it was bad, they actually then rewrite that paragraph to make it make sense. And then we can then turn around and turn that into, the next training data set.
So that's super cool. Thank you for sharing.
So, Dan, you have been one of the oldest API users, and now you are one of the most prominent and high volume API users. So during this course of using the API, have you ever experienced any downtime from the API or any unexpected bugs in the API response while using it for the Viable, or got any such response from the clients who are using it?
So over the year plus that we've used it, there's only been one incident that was a problem, and that was only a problem for less than an hour. So it's been a very, very stable API. So
we can totally say that this is one of the most robust and one of the most sophisticated API out there, right?
As far as AI APIs go, absolutely. There's really only a few others out there that I can think of that are more stable, and those are all provided by giant companies like Google. We have not really had any sort of stability problems or connectivity problems or anything like that with the OpenAI AI or API.
I have a little bit of a reflective question at the end. I'm just wondering where you are at now. You've made this immense journey from the inception, the playing around with the API, to where you're at now at a much bigger scale. Do you have any regrets about this process whatsoever? Is there anything that you would do differently if you were starting over?
Yeah, so it took us a little while so we always knew that the sort of question and answer side of things was going to be good for our customers. But it took us a while to figure out that eventually our customers run out of questions to ask because they don't know what they don't know. And so one thing that I would have done earlier, I think, was understand that dynamic and really get into this is more talking about like our product evolution than the way that we're using the API. One of the things that I wish I had done earlier was understand that push or that pull of insights was only half the equation, and that we needed to also push insights out to our customers. And the way to do that would have been to talk to these customers much earlier and really understand what they were looking for from a push perspective. It took us a while to figure out exactly what was needed there, and even over the last few months, we've been working to make that happen. But like I said, it was mostly around the product direction that I would have liked to do faster. As far as like working with the API goes, there are some things that I wish OpenAI had done. So for example, it can be fairly challenging to figure out what your exact costs are on a sort of per API call thing, because they don't provide very good like analytics there. They've got your billing page and you've got like one graph at the top that shows like your total expenses. And then they can break it down by call below that, but you can't get really like good you can't get really good. Like it's not broken down by prompt, for instance, right? I would love to know like, okay, how much exactly does my question asking prompt cost on average, right? And so that kind of stuff is like really getting a handle on cost. I think took us too long due to things like that. So I wish we had also done that as well.
So as a concluding question, then, like for all the people, all of us who love and use Viable, they would love to know your perspective on where do you see Viable in the next 2 to 5 years?
Sure. So as I said, our mission is to help teams make better decisions using qualitative data. I think in the near future, we're going to be marrying that with quantitative data. So not only are we going to be taking in all that, the customer support data and the chats and the tweets and the App Store reviews, but eventually we're actually also going to be pulling in things like product analytics. So you can hook up your segment account and get all of your actual usage piped in. So you can ask questions like, how many customers are using feature X? Or of the customers who use feature X, how do they want feature X to be improved? So that you can really marry that quantitative and qualitative sides together to do a full analysis of the thing. That's more on the sort of the pull and the insights, the pull insight side. On the push side, we are our whole goal there is to get the right information to the right people at the right time. And what this means is, things like anomaly detection. So as we, normally we see the word bug pop up, 500 times a day for this one company, but for some reason, this week it's been 2,000 a day. And so can we proactively, alert them on what that bug or on the spike in bug, but then go further than that, because we have this automated analysis already, we can actually tell them what the bug is, and maybe even do some suggestions for how to fix it. So we really think of the sort of generated text as our product, right? It's the thing that we sell is generated insights. And so the more in-depth and the more powerful that we make those insights and the more timely we deliver those insights, the more valuable we're going to be.
That is really great perspective. That is really interesting and exciting to know. And we are actually waiting for this to come out and to use it really, really soon.
Sure.
Thank you so much. It was amazing talking to you.
Absolutely. It was a blast. Thank you.